You're the best around. Nothing's ever gonna bring me down. You're the best around. Does anybody know the rest of the words? Because I really don't. Hi, welcome to episode 4 of Only a Flesh Wound, the medieval podcast. I'm Amy O'Neill, and today we're going to talk about bestiaries because I wanted to talk about these forever. They are my favourite things. They are perhaps my favourite thing in the medieval world. I love studying them. I just adore them. And I want y'all, Americanism there. Like, I'm not very, very British. I want all of y'all to appreciate the beauty that is a bunch of people who had no idea what animals looked like. Which is bestiaries. Woo! Like, I would really like to tell you all what I have been doing over the past 2 weeks since the last episode came out. Do you know what? I really would. But I am recording this on the 18th of December because I'm going home for Christmas. And unless everyone really wants to hear screaming and my dogs barking in the background from my parents' house, it's not really a great space to podcast in, because you're gonna hear my dog, you're gonna hear my cat, and then my sister's hedgehog is just gonna come and spike me, and it's gonna be very annoying. So I'm recording this way in advance, and I have no idea what I'll be doing in the 2 weeks. It will be Christmas. Christmas is coming, which is exciting. It will have been Christmas. So how was y'all's Christmas? How was your New Year? I think this comes out after New Year. It's 2020. What's it like in the future? What is everybody dead? Who knows? I mean, you could be. I don't know. Because this is December still. Maybe the moment it hits midnight on the 1st of January 2020, it just, the world resets. And we're all just, back as amoebas, oh. What am I talking about? I don't know. I think I'm just scared that it's been a decade. Because 2010 was a fun time of disasters, but also I knew what was going on. And now I'm like, oh no, what is gonna happen? It's 2020. 10 more years of not remembering what year it is. In my head it's still 2013. I genuinely wrote 2013 on a piece of paper today as the date. It was the 18th of December 2013. Nope, that was 6 years ago. Oh no. 6 years ago. Was I doing GCSEs? Or was I doing A-levels? I was doing one of them. But that has nothing to do with this podcast. We are going to talk about bestiaries. If at any point during the episode you like the episode, share, subscribe. Please let people know about this. If you have the burning desire to tell people, I will be eternally grateful. Tell your friend. And then have your friend tell a friend. I don't know, start a knowledge chain of, have you heard about this really crappy podcast? And if you want to make us less crappy, email us at onlyafleshwoundpodcast@gmail.com and follow us on Twitter @fleshwoundpod and yell at me for not knowing what I'm talking about. Because I never do. But bestiaries. You'll know basically what a bestiary is. The basic term, bestiary, it just means a book of beasts. It's literally, if you've ever read Fantastic Beasts and Where They Came From, the Harry Potter book, that's a bestiary. But kind of medieval bestiaries are a little bit more complicated than that, because obviously medieval people weren't the first people to be oh no, what's an elephant? Let's write about it. There were loads of people before that. I mean, there were the Romans and the Greeks, and this is going way into territory I don't know. I need a classicist. Tell me. I know maybe one classicist, and I don't think she would be happy with the way I speak Latin in any way, because medieval Latin is different. But anyway, so, medieval bestiaries are a little bit more complicated than you'd think. So, you've got your physiologus tradition, the illustrated bestiary tradition, and the wonders of the East tradition. And these are kind of the three main things. Typically, bestiaries are also Christian. There are a few Islamic bestiaries that are a lot of fun. I don't speak Arabic, so I'm not really going to talk about those. I did in an essay once. I talked about the unicorn in Islamic bestiaries. It was quite fun. But we're going to talk about the different traditions of bestiaries. First of all, the oldest one, physiologus. It means the natural historian, and it began with this Greek poem about 2nd, 4th century Common Era, probably written in Alexandria. It was called the Physiologus, and all of the animals in that text were native to North Africa, and there were no domesticated animals, so there weren't like cattle or pigs or cows and stuff. It was just like wild animals. There were 40-something chapters in it, and it was Christian learning. It was a tool to help people learn moral lessons and biblical passages, and we don't have the original manuscript anymore. There is no original Greek of the Physiologus. Nothing. We do have it in Latin, and Arabic, and Armenian, and Ethiopian, and Flemish, and German, and Icelandic, and Provençal, and Romanian, and Russian, Syrian, Old, and Middle English. Like, it was hugely popular, so translated, so shared across basically a lot of the world. A lot of people were reading this. It wasn't like you'd assume that it was, because there's no manuscript surviving, you'd think, oh, well, they didn't really care about it. They did. Like, it was translated into so many languages and shared across so many different cultures. It was incredible. Like most of the bestiaries that we're going to talk about, it really didn't know what it was talking about. Loads of inaccuracies, loads of stuff about animals that didn't exist, loads of stuff about animals that did exist doing really ridiculous things. Can't remember my favourite at the moment, can't remember it off the top of my head, but some of the stories that they have actual animals doing is wild. Elephants fighting snakes, which is a fun time. And the text was also really interested. All of the interpretations of animals and kind of the stories and myths that were included in it were very based on Jewish, Indian, and Egyptian traditions. And then it was written in Greek, and then it was translated into 70,000 languages. So it's really this sort of multicultural hodgepodge of a bunch of bullshit. It's ridiculous looking back at it sometimes, but it's very interesting. Incredibly interesting. I love it. The Old and Middle English translations are also very, very different from each other. We don't know, I can't remember why, but they are. And I tell you to go look for yourself, but honestly, I don't speak Old English, so I could not point you to where to go as to like the language and where it's changed and why it's changed. Old English is a mess. I'm letting you know that right now. But that's the physiologus tradition. But that's not the only type of medieval bestiary. So the next one is this thing called the Wonders of the East, or the Marvels of the East, or whatever. And yeah, the title's not great. It's kind of this collection, an explanation of animals, monstrous people, but also places and races, and sort of presenting them as anthropology, but also as symbolism, and something called exegesis, I don't know, but it's basically looking at the world as an explanation of God. So it's looking at the animals and also people, specifically non-Christians, specifically a lot of non-white people in this book were basically shown to be very animalistic. It is not good in many ways, and I think people have tried to trace back certain descriptions to certain families or tribes that existed at the same time, but I don't think that's necessary, because I mean, they're so completely different in any shape of the word that there's no real resemblance. Even if there is a connection, there's no resemblance between the representations that you have here and the actual people that existed. So, I don't know, it seems kind of pointless and just an exercise of, oh, can we trace, where, I don't know what I was saying. It doesn't seem like that useful. I mean, it might be if you're looking at like cultural contacts, but in terms of looking at how the medieval world and medieval people represented the animal world and the natural world around them, it's not very useful, and it's just all very racist, and it's not good. Plot twist? Oh, who would have known? So, the Wonders of the East is also kind of like a travel guide, and it was supposedly a derivative of a 4th century text that was some letter to some Roman emperor. We don't know. It could all be bullshit. And then it was translated into Latin in the 7th and 8th centuries, in a text called the Liber Monstrorum, which just means the Book of Monsters. And there's this really interesting quote. It opens with this quote that I think is very telling. You have asked about the secret arrangement of the lands of the earth, monstrous parts of men, and the horrible and innumerable forms of wild beasts, and the most dreadful kind of dragons. So, it's literally just a compilation of all of the stuff that they thought existed in the world. Now, did the medieval people, the people in England actually believe that all of these animals existed debate is long and virulous, and I would argue that it doesn't really matter whether it was real or not in their heads. But I think what that quote implies is that this person who was writing it did believe that it was true in some way. So the Latin was 8th century, And then we have the Old English text. The Old English text is part of the Noel Codex, which is part of the Vitellius manuscript, which you may recognise from our manuscript episode. It's the Beowulf manuscript. The Noel Codex included The Wonders of the East, this poem called Judith, a fictional letter from Alexander the Great to Aristotle and Beowulf. It's a late 10th, early 11th century manuscript, and there's a really interesting quote from this scholar Asa Mittman. Somewhere within this violent period of intense warfare, illuminators and scribes were at work on the turbid Vitellius manuscript. I love that description, turbid. Because it is this text that is very much interested in monsters, in monstrosity, in what constitutes a monster, in what makes a monster, what makes a person. What's the difference between animal and human? Is there a difference? That's one of the things that a lot of bestiaries look at. Pardon? I'm drinking a Dr. Pepper, and the fizzy always makes me go weird. But the medieval bestiaries were often looking at the boundaries between human and animal, and what scared them about this boundary was how it didn't exist. Well, obviously it doesn't exist. Humans are animals. They wouldn't have believed that. But this idea of blurring the boundaries is why a lot of the monsters that we have in bestiaries, that a lot of the animals that we have are as scary to the medieval people as they are, because they don't exist comfortably in a box. They're not very, very non-human. They're too close. And it scares them. And I think it scares us still. I think we're always a little bit more afraid of monsters that are similar to us in some way. I mean, I was about to try and think of like a horror film example. Frankenstein? Yeah, because Frankenstein's kind of similar to us. And that's why he scares us. I don't know. I'm pulling this out of my ass. I pull most things out of my ass. Oh my god. No, that is not how I meant that. Mom, turn off the episode. Oh god, I didn't mean it like that. I didn't mean it like that. I didn't. Illustrated manuscripts. Illustrated bestiaries. Suddenly there's pictures. Suddenly people are drawing things. And this is in the 12th and 13th centuries. There are so many bestiaries being written. And because people are writing them for very rich people, typically, people are putting in very elaborate, very expansive drawings, like incredible things. In, contemporary standards. From modern standards, they're probably a bit shit, but for them, brilliant. They'd often have, gold in them. They'd paint with liquid gold or blue, which blue ink was more expensive than gold, which I always find fascinating. If there's blue in a manuscript, it's a very, very expensive manuscript. And so in the 12th and 13th century, the most common language that they used in the bestiaries is Latin, because that's typically kind of the high status, sort of knowledgeable people read Latin language. People, Middle English is kind of, colloquial, it's slangy. People, you don't speak it in court. You don't speak it in court, and you don't speak it in school, because, darling, common. So they're all in Latin. Well, most of them are. Some have been found in other languages. As I said earlier, there are some Arabic bestiaries. They come a bit later, I think. A little bit. I think they're 13th, 14th century. Because I think the argument is that they adapted the genre and they did some really cool, interesting things with them. But I think they came later. And they have found over 100 manuscripts of illustrated bestiaries. Not bestiaries, illustrated. And these include the Aberdeen bestiary, the Harley bestiary, the Peterborough bestiary, the Ashmole. They're all gorgeous, I think a lot of them. I know the Aberdeen and the Harley are digitised online, so if you want to have a look, I think Google them. I think they're all digitised online. And these bestiaries are often bigger, they have more animals in them, they're more explicitly moralised, they're made kind of stories to teach you lessons, and there are so many of them, and there are so many differences in all of these manuscripts that people have grouped them into families, like the different subcategories of bestiary, and there are a few. There are five. There are 5 families. So first family is typically from a physiologus source. So they take the physiologus and adapt it. But they also usually include excerpts from Isidore, who was a Greek writer, I don't know, and some other guy called Hugh of Philoe. I can't speak French. They're usually not categorised, so the animals are just kind of dotted in randomly. There's no categories, but it always begins with a lion. So first family begins with a lion. That's that. Then we have the transitional group, which keeps chapters from the first family. And then we have then they add more stuff from Isidore, and they add categories. Like Isidore was also a natural historian, I think, and he would categorise the animals. And in the first family they didn't categorise the animals. In the transitional group they categorised the animals, kind of by Isidore's terms that he lays out. And then we have the second family, which are 12th century, and they include about 120 subjects, animals, monsters. There's more sources, so they have more material from Isidore, even more, some stuff from Pliny the Elder, Solinus, Ambrose's Hexaemyron, and Rabanus Maurus. They're categorised as Isidore put out still, but they're just much bigger. The third family is only 5 manuscripts, so there's only 5 in the third family. And not only do they include the animals, they include Isidore's monstrous people in their text, and the sequence, the bits about animals and beasts, begins to start with domesticated animals. So they talk about cats, they talk about dogs, they talk about cows, whereas before it was all just wild animals that were, roaming about free. And finally we have the fourth family. The fourth family is 15th century, and there is only one surviving manuscript from the fourth family, the Cambridge MS, upper score G, low G 6.5. And it's 15th century, sorry. This is based on Bartholomeus Anglicus's De Proprietatibus Rerum. I'm just saying that word out loud for the first time ever. Latin is hard to pronounce. And I don't know much about that manuscript. There's one manuscript in that family. If it's that manuscript, if you find one that's also 4th family and is not that manuscript, you're not going to make a lot of money. Scholars do not make a lot of money, but you'll get a lot of Twitter historians being very excited at you. And is that valid? Is that, I don't think that's an incentive to do anything, honestly. Just, yeah. And then, so those were the families. And by the 14th century, there are less bestiaries, they are less elaborate, they're kind of falling out of popularity. So they were kind of a fad, they were a fashion almost. And then people just stopped caring about them. And why have I written something about the 12th century there? Why is that there? What? Ah, ignore me. Something about Aristotle. Something about... Oh, the reason why bestiaries kind of became a thing was the 12th century. In the 12th century is when bestiaries start appearing. It was sort of the rediscovery of Aristotle, and people started becoming more scientific, quote unquote, in their approach, and scientific accuracy was kind of becoming a thing, but they were still, obviously serving a Christian tradition and a way of looking at science as proof of biblical morality. So it wasn't, oh, let's just look at science for science's sake. It was, oh, let's look at science to prove Jesus. Which, fair, but it's not really science. So calling bestiaries science is a bit, not really, not at all, honestly. But they're fun, and they're what people back then thought science was. Which I'm pretty sure any scientist in their right mind would be like, what the hell? Like, you can't just... When I say, the bestiaries had more sources, by sources, I mean, they have this one text where, Pliny says that he heard from one guy, there is, this people who met a unicorn. And you're like, well, that's not evidence. That's a guy at a pub telling you a story. That's not science. But they thought it was reasonable. They put so much stock into these people, into Pliny, into Isidore, into Aristotle, they kind of didn't question it. Which is not good for expanding knowledge, or learning things, or doing anything, let's be real. But that's how you kind of got past them. And now, we're done with all of the boring stuff. And it has been almost 30 minutes. Why are you still here? And if you are still here, congratulations, you get to the fun part of the episode, where I start talking about all of the fun friggin' animals and monsters that exist that are my favourite. Yay! Because y'all want to hear about the monsters. You want to learn about the creepy things that exist. Heads up, I am not going to include unicorns. We are not talking about unicorns here. We are not talking about dragons here. Because everybody knows that unicorns and dragons are a thing. Like, what else am I going to tell you? Oh, dragons exist. Congratulations. I've just repeated something that, Lord of the Rings has told you 70 times. No, we are going to talk about the fun monsters that either people haven't heard of, or that because they've been used in pulp culture are so incredibly different from what they were in the medieval period. So you wouldn't recognise them as what you think. If you heard their name, you wouldn't recognise them. So here we go. The first monster is the Iacalus. Iacalus? The Iacalus. And this is from Isidore of Seville's 7th century text. And it was the etymologies that he wrote about a load of animals and things that were rumoured to exist. And one of them was the Iacalus. The Iacalus is an African flying snake, which is a lot of fun. So apparently, according to Lucan, who was the Roman poet who Isidore, took at face value and was sorry, and was like, oh, why would he lie? The Iacalus would wait for prey in a tree, and then, when it saw the prey, it would literally throw its friggin' self off the tree and just, whack it. Just, pinball itself into the prey and kill it. Wild. In the Aberdeen bestiary, the Iacalus is a cemetery living snake, and it gathers all the wisdom of the dead and tells the living, and if you be nice to it, it'll tell you all of the dead secrets. But then if you don't give it a single bowl of warm beer every day, you've got to leave it a single bowl of warm beer every day, or it is going to literally kill every single person who's ever asked them a question. Which I relate to. No, I don't. I can't drink beer. Gluten intolerance. Not a lot of fun. But that's the Iacalus. Love it. Snake that either wangs itself into its prey or, talks to dead people. Either way, that's a lot of fun. Our second monster is the Bonacon. The Bonacon is the staple of bestiaries. It is found in loads of them. It has the head of a bull and the body of a horse, and spotted horns that are curled backwards, but are apparently useless, and you're like, oh, well, what's the point? This creature has a defense mechanism, a beautiful defense mechanism, which is, when it feels threatened, it shoots its own crap up to 5 miles away, just at the person. And it's beautiful. Just it craps on people. That's its defense mechanism. Just diarrhea. Ew. That's what y'all wanted to hear about in this episode. Really wanted to learn about this. But the Bonacon, I love it because it's just a cow and it poops on people. Who came up with this? Beautiful. Pliny the Elder apparently came up with it. Gorgeous. Love him. Love him for that. Less fun. We have the Leocrota, which has a bunch of different names. They all have a bunch of different names because language wasn't standardised at any point and everybody just spelt things however they wanted to. And it is a horse-like creature from India, or in some bestiaries it said Ethiopia, which, not fun. So it is a half stag, half a lion, and it has the head of a horse, but it has a mouth that reaches all the way to its ears, non-stop, just giant Joker smile of a mouth, And then it doesn't have teeth. Oh no! It has a single bony ridge that never dulls, so that it can eat you at any point. And if you're thinking, oh, I would never run towards that animal, it can mimic human speech and lure you into the darkness and then just devour you with its one big tooth and its like unhinged jaw mouth thing and its half lion. Brilliant. Pliny said that it was created by a lion and a hyena having the hanky-panky, and that it was born with the strength of a lion and the craftiness of the hyena. Because, fun fact, medieval people and medieval bestiaries, they also say that hyenas would mimic the sound of vomiting to attract prey. What? Who said this? Which one of you? Who do we have to blame? Which idiot was like, oh yeah, that's a noise. I bet it's a hyena pretending to vomit. Whomst. Well, we're going to talk about something else now. And the name does sound similar to something else that you probably know. But this is the hydrus. Not the hydra. Hydrus. So the hydrus lived along the River Nile, where it prowls the water for crocodiles. And what it would do is it would cover itself in mud and then throw itself into the sleeping crocodile's mouth. And then, when the crocodile's mouth closed, it would slither its way in through the crocodile's insides and eat all of its internal organs and then, like, gnaw its way out. What? Just, like, eaten from the inside out by a mud-covered thing. It was apparently snake-like. Some say it was kind of birdy, some say it was snaky. It's almost like somebody made this up. And there's, no standardized version of it. And the second one? This is not the second one. The one that we're going to talk about next is one that you will most definitely have heard of. And that is the basilisk. But the thing is, the basilisk is something that people misunderstand, because it is very different now to what it was. So basilisk means little king in Greek, and it is considered the king of serpents. So it's either a small snake thing, or it's a rooster with a snake tail. And I can't decide which I prefer. Just like, oh, is it a little snake? Or is it a chicken with a snake tail? I think I prefer the chicken with the snake tail. And what happens is a basilisk is hatched out of a male bird's egg. If the parents, if they ignore the egg, the basilisk is born, and it can only be killed by a weasel. A weasel. Who? Like, I know the weasels are terrifying in Wind in the Willows. But what? It can kill snakes by its smell, by a sight, and with its voice. If it hisses at you, apparently you die. Mental. Love it. But that's the basilisk as it was. I know it gets mentioned a lot in pop fiction at the moment. The second Harry Potter film came out in like the 2000s? I've forgotten what time is. But that's the basilisk. And our next creature is the beautiful, beautiful manticore. The manticore comes from Persian mythology, and it was really really, really popular in bestiaries. Everybody included them. Beautiful. And it was... They kind of believe that the word manticore came from mantiger, which I don't know what that word means, but if you do, I don't know, tell me what it means. And the manticore has the body of a red lion and a human head. There's 3 rows of teeth, the wings of a bat, and a voice that sounds like a trumpet. It also has a tail like a scorpion, and it eats its victims, leaving absolutely no traces. No traces, so it eats the bones, and the clothes, and the belongings, and the hair, and everything. Terrifying. Like, red lion, human head, 3 rows of teeth, he's like a friggin' shark. Don't like it. Though I do want the wings of a bat. And finally, my favourite monster. I have a picture of them, one of them, staring at me right now by the side of my desk. It's the Blemmy. The friggin' Blemmy. So, starts in Greece. And it is this ancient belief that headless men live around somewhere in the world. They have no heads, and their face, so their nose, their eyes and their mouth, are on their chest. Though some people put their eyes on their shoulders, which is a bit weirder. I don't know. They're hugely popular. They're shown on the Hereford map, the Hereford world map, which is the map that we have that survives from medieval England. The Blemmy is beautiful. Love them. In the first instance of them existing, the first instance that we have of them, they were described as a tribe inhabiting in the lower parts of Nubia. Nobody knows what that means. Probably all bullshit. And then Pliny the Elder says that Blemmies had no heads, their mouths and eyes being seated on their breasts. And then by the later Middle Ages, by the travels of Sir John Mandeville, by the bestiaries, the Blemmy becomes a creature that calls people's names. So it attracts its victims, its human victims, it calls their names, eats all of them except for the head, and then weeps over it. And I just... There's a lot to unpack there. There is a lot. There's a lot. And I don't have time. I really don't. But if you ever catch me on a good day, I will scream at you about how much I love the Blemmy. Because it's beautiful. 1, I love the story. 2, I love the drawings. 3, I love the fact that there is an entire friggin' scholarly debate about the meaning of why the Blemmy has genitals drawn in all of the bestiaries. Because it's like one of the few creatures that does. It has like a penis. Just like, what? Why did you do this? Why? Beautiful. Love it. Love it. Google the Blemmy. Find out about the Blemmy. Adopt him as your son, as I have. As I have. And those are what I think are the most interesting, least well-known animals and monsters in the bestiaries. They are creepy, they are violent, they are odd, and they are weird, and nobody quite really understands whether people believe that they were real or not. Nobody knows sort of how or why. We just know that this happened, and it's very fascinating. And they were super popular. Oh my god, bestiaries were so popular. So many of them. And what bestiaries were, as I've said, is just using animals to teach moral lessons. So it's the stories about spiders being bad because they're terrible wives, or the turtle dove is great because, they mate for life, so it's like, be good and don't get divorced, that kind of thing. And I just love the bestiary stuff because we still do it today. We still use animals to teach children, which is what a lot of the bestiaries were for. They were for teaching children, they were for teaching young clergy, young priests, what to do of moral lessons. And we still do that today. I mean, look at Disney. Look at Finding Nemo. Look at the Disney Robin Hood. Look at literally any film that Disney has ever come out with. They will use animals and they will give them characteristics. They will give them, usually based on their species, and then they will use them to teach children to be good, be kind, share your food, don't be mean, don't be, a terrible person. And that's exactly what the bestiaries were doing, and I find that incredible, that is something that we have continued to do. This is almost universal, of people using the animals around them to teach. And I find that incredible. And that's why I want to study this forever. The bestiaries are fun. The bestiaries are actually sort of the reason I'm doing medieval history. I did a module in my last year of my undergraduate degree called Fantastic Beasts and Where They Came From, which was about natural history and animals, and we spent 4 or 5 weeks on medieval traditions, and I just fell in love with it. It made my soul shine, as they say. It was what got me into medieval history, because up to then I hadn't really cared. We'd read the York mystery plays back in my first year, and I'd wanted to scream the entire time, I hate the York mystery plays. I'm going to admit it, I really don't like them. But the bestiaries, they excited me. And that's why I wanted to do this episode so soon, so recent. What? No. I wanted to do this episode as close to the top of the first episode as possible. I wanted to do this. I wanted to tell everyone, because I think they're cool. And now y'all are cool because you know about the blemmy, and that is the only definition of cool. Like, screw everything else. Do you know what a blemmy is? You're automatically cool. Oh, I wish that was true. That would have made my high school life so much easier. But I think, yep, that is the end of our episode today. So, thank you for listening. Thank you for sticking with us. We will see you in 2 weeks with, once again, another episode I haven't planned out, because guess what? It's coming out in maybe more than a month, because it's the 18th of December when I'm recording this. So, like the video if you liked the episode, subscribe so you don't miss an episode, follow us on Twitter at fleshwoundpod, give us an email, onlyafleshwoundpodcast@gmail.com, have a chat with your friends about the blemmy, and let them know that you are now a convert to my blemmy cult, which is what the next episode will be about. It will be the 10 commandments of the blemmy cult. Number 1, draw a penis. Oh, that was a terrible joke.